We're recording and capture all my cursing and complaining.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to NextOppSocial. We are your hosts, Rochelle Wright and Juan Buford. We believe entrepreneurship is empowerment, and we are committed to the development and progress of entrepreneurs, providing you with the information you need to build thriving businesses. If you're new here to NextOppSocial, we feature fledgling and established entrepreneurs alike throughout the Detroit metropolitan area. Everyone from multimillionaires, subject matter experts, CEOs, best-selling authors, and some of the brightest minds in business. We cover a wide variety of topics regarding how to make the shift from W-2 to 1099 entrepreneurship, strategies for increasing your productivity, how to properly structure and launch your business, how to market more effectively, acquire more clients and keep them, and best business practices to help you grow, scale, and protect your business. If you're smart, industrious, committed to personal and professional development, and building financial independence, hit that subscribe button here on YouTube and visit our website at nextoppsocial.com. So today we are talking about social media, right? But rather than in the traditional way of offering tips or tricks or hacks or suggestions, we're going to get a little deeper. We're going to talk about our relationships with social media. So especially as entrepreneurs, social media is something that I would believe anyone listening or watching right now understands the value in it. Especially as an entrepreneur straight off the bat, we understand, we get the value that social media can bring to our business, which is initially what makes it so enticing and easy to dive into and spend a lot of our marketing efforts on. But who's doing all that, right? Who is the one posting and creating content and socializing and managing messages on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever? Who is doing all that? We are. Right? Business owners, people who we didn't get into business for the specific purpose of running social media accounts, unless your job is a social media manager. That's not why you did it. But as a marketer, I spend so much of my time either educating people on social media or helping people streamline or optimize their social media presence. I know this is such an important topic, and there's 800 angles that we could go into this, but I'm going to pass it over to you, Juan, to hear some of your initial thoughts on it.
Well, first and foremost, my initial thoughts are this, right? And I thought long and hard about this topic because I was listening to a podcast a couple days ago talking about Clubhouse. And over the course of talking about Clubhouse, hi everyone, I'm taking a walk. In the course of talking about Clubhouse, I was listening to this podcast and how some of the individuals on the podcast were literally spending upwards of 8 to 9 hours a day.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And I said to myself, what in the world is going on? What entrepreneur or business owner has 8 to 9 hours to spend on social media, right?
Yeah.
And so as I listened to them and began to inquire about the utility of doing that, it was a reminder to me that social media does different things for different people, right? It serves different purposes. It's not all uniform, if you will. And so when we talk about social media and we talk about whether or not it's good for someone, whether or not it's bad for someone, we have to take that context into account, right?
Yeah.
And for those people who are utilizing social media on Clubhouse and spending 8 or 9 hours, they're not there promoting their business. They're not there to build their business through that network. What they're doing it for, wow, today's amazing. What they're doing it for is they were on there building relationships. Yeah. These were business owners that were already established. These were business owners that already created a system in place where their businesses were operating independent of them. And they were on there really utilizing social media for what it was designed to be in the first place, right? Which is provide opportunities and spaces for individuals to network have important conversations, be able to engage that person in San Diego, be able to engage that person somewhere in Peru, be able to engage that person somewhere in Shanghai, well, otherwise, absent social media, those interactions wouldn't have taken place.
Right.
And for me, it was an interesting reminder about how social media can be so beneficial and such an important piece when it comes to building your business.
I think that's one big area that with all the demands of social media, all the different changes of social media, when the algorithms update, when new features show up, when new platforms show up, that we quickly forget that the purpose of social media, even now, not just in the beginning, but even now, was to socialize, right? It's to socialize and create those connections. And especially when I'm talking to business owners or other entrepreneurs and trying to help them with the overwhelm they feel with social media, or the frustration they feel with all of it. The frustration typically lies in a few places. One is that they don't know how to keep up with it, right? And when they say that, they need content creation for the platform. They don't know what to post. They don't know what to talk about. And then the second thing is that they're frustrated with that they're not growing, right? Or their following's not getting bigger or whatever. And the reason why those two go hand in hand is because they're equating creating content with, oh, now my reach and following and every impressions, all of it should grow. But at the end of the day, what actually makes you grow is the socialization part. So the socialization part is so key and so important, and something I want to like emphasize to a T. You can, truthfully, I'm not saying everyone should just stop creating content, right? But if you are hitting this wall of like overwhelm, frustration, you're tired of social media, regardless of what platforms you're on, if you're hitting that brink, of just being like, and now you're not doing anything on it, right? And you're starting to become distant, and now the impression is that people are getting is that you're not around, right? What's happening, what you can do to just shift your focus. Don't worry about creating content right now. Don't worry about trying to build up, all this different stuff. Just socialize, right? Start connecting with your followers that you already have. Start connecting with their followers that might be great followers for you. Start sending messages. Just start socializing. And even with your lack of content creation, if you socialize, these things will grow. If you socialize, you'll start getting more awareness around what type of content you want to create moving forward. So, it's a mixed bag, right, with social media. We often hear a lot too of the overwhelm and frustration as well. I use those words a lot, but that's usually the two that I hear a lot: overwhelm and frustration, especially with trying to keep up with platforms. You talked about Clubhouse already, Juan, of like, it's new and it's booming, just like TikTok's news booming. And then we feel, and we hear a lot of talk around like, oh, you can kill it on these platforms right now, right? Because they're new and booming. And we get sort of like FOMO around like, right. Oh, I need to be there too.
Yeah, I mean, and this is where social media can become problematic for individuals, right? Because you can find yourself in a situation where you don't necessarily have a schedule set up, and FOMO sets in. Right. And you find yourself trying to figure out how to use Canva, try to use all these different platforms to build some type of nice, crisp image or some type of marketing artifact. Then you spend all your time trying to figure out whether it's LinkedIn, is it Instagram, is it Facebook, whatever next portal it is. And part of the frustration being a business owner, if you don't have a systemic way of doing these things, right? Mm-hmm. If you haven't put together a strategy, you feel yourself pulled between doing the everyday KPIs that are necessary to be successful, while at the same time participating in the social media world, right? And let's be real, it's no longer a social media world, it's the business world.
Right.
if you're not on social media, it is the equivalent of putting an incredible business downtown Detroit, Birmingham, Atlanta, Miami, whatever the case may be, with no signage, right? No listing, no nothing. So we know it's necessary. We know that you have to make your presence felt there. You have to provide content there, but what does that schedule look like? Okay, let me take this off while the technician is no longer in my residence harassing me. Okay, so this is proof that social media is such an incredible tool. This just wouldn't have happened 10 years ago. Right. In any respect. But yeah, that's kind of like one of the ways in which being too preoccupied with social media can become problematic, right? When it starts to impact your ability to do the things you need to do on a daily basis to be successful, and you're stressing out about, how many times should I have to post? What should the post look like? What platform should I utilize? It can become a bit overwhelming, right? And, I, for one, I firmly believe, I've learned through experience that this isn't the 19th century or even the 20th century. They used to say, if you build it, people will come. No, they won't. If you don't let people know that you're building a business, that you have viable services and products that can help them, they're not coming, at least not enough to support your business. So then the question becomes, okay, what are the steps I need to take to put together a schedule, to put together content that works best for me, that allows me to succeed without feeling like I'm taking myself away from the core activities that I need to be successful as an entrepreneur and business owner, right? I feel fortunate because one of my biggest pieces of advice is to find someone who's already doing the work, right? The network of individuals who are already successfully employing social media. I felt very fortunate that you and I don't believe in randomly, but that you and I did kind of bump into each other some years ago while at Bamboo Detroit, right? Because otherwise, you know what I'd be doing right now. I mean, you think my stuff is elementary now, man, you should have saw it then. So, one of the first pieces of advice I encourage individuals to do is, get in contact with professionals, get in contact with individuals who are very successful employing social media as it is, and gather that advice, do a little bit of fact finding, right? Entrepreneurship is very much a game of experimentation and monotonous consistency. It's a little bit of a balance of both, right? And what you're going to need to do is find the formula that works best for you, because one size doesn't fit all. We all come to business with different experiences, different backgrounds, different self-concepts of who we are and what we do. And, as I'm reflecting on what you're sharing and even my own experience with social media, those are the things I'm thinking about first and foremost right now, as my kids scream to the top of the lungs in the background. Yes.
Another thing I think too, as you bring it up, of like finding those professionals that are going to help, things like that. A big part of that is, again, we want this talk to be a little more emotional, right? So like if thinking about, okay, if you're like, okay, I'm not prepared to hire someone, you might be prepared to hire someone. You might not be prepared to hire a full social media manager. You might not be prepared to hire a marketer to outsource everything to. But you absolutely, just like you would, think about some of the software and tools that you use, right? That you pay a monthly fee for. Maybe you're invoicing stuff or, your web hosting, right? You want to think about it that way of, you use these software and tools to help you generate revenue faster, or they're more revenue generating tasks, right? So rather than thinking about, okay, I don't have time for an assistant, I can't hire an assistant yet, I can't hire a social media manager yet, that's fine. But hiring even for a consultation, hiring for strategy help, I want to emphasize to you that that's not the same as hiring for just like an assistant, right? That is a revenue generating activity, because if you can get your process and strategy down, which should be custom to you, it's not a copy paste sort of thing, right? If you can get that down and execute that in a way with a marketer, where a good marketer should be able to look at what you're doing currently, look at what you're capable of doing, look at what is possible for you, and find that balance, right? And if you are able to actually execute on that, it will be revenue generating, right, on social media. So spending money in that area, not just throwing money at Facebook ads and crossing your fingers and hoping it works, right? Not just spending money on assistant to outsource it and hope that they do a good job, but spending your money on getting the plan right, getting the strategy right, and it's strategy right for you so that you can manage that and do that moving forward. It's absolutely a revenue generating purchase. And that should hold a lot more weight than other things that you would hire out for.
I agree 100%. You know, when you think about spending money and time, you know, at the end of the day, what I'm hearing from you is that you need to have professional guidance and assistance. You need to have someone that can help you determine, once again, what's going to be the best use of your money and time. And you kind of illustrate that. So I don't want to be ad nauseum on it, right? What I also want to reflect on and think about, though, is, okay, we talked about from a standpoint of an entrepreneur or business owner, how you can employ social media to benefit. But it's also important to understand that social media can be a detriment too, right? I think we were having this conversation recently with, I think it came up in our conversation with Nina, right? How you can be on social media and literally be overwhelmed by all the BS.com and negativity that's taking place out there. And that's some of my concern, right? Particularly for the creatives, particularly for entrepreneurs who kind of feel shut in right now. You know, I think a lot of us have gone into this default mode where, you know, you can utilize social media to replace interaction. You can utilize social media to replace that belly-to-belly, eyeball-to-eyeball conversation. You can use social media to replace sitting on a sofa or a couch across the table from a family member or a friend. And I firmly just don't believe that's how it works. I don't think it's the most effective way to do that, right? Part of the reason why you're going to have such high suicide rates, and, you know, I'm almost afraid to see the statistics following this pandemic, but I think part of that reason is because people have lost social interaction. And now their friends and their family, quite frankly, the things they're taking to possibly inebriate themselves, right? The things that they're taking to distract themselves. And when we talk about entrepreneurs, because we tend to spend a lot of time in solitary confinements, right? So we can focus and do the things that we need to do. I think that becomes a real dangerous, like noxious combination, right? And, you know, when we talk about social media and whether it's for the good, for the bad, how to utilize it to be successful, but how can it be of detriment to you? I think that's a conversation needs to be had too.
Yeah. Consuming content is a real fine balance that we don't actively think about as much as we should, right? Because we are so used to, at this point now, sitting on our phones and scroll, and not even realizing how much content we're consuming, and not even really paying attention to what we're allowing ourselves, what we're consuming in that content, right? Not taking enough careful look at, maybe I shouldn't be following this, that, or the other thing. Maybe this isn't serving, you know, my mental capacity anymore to be looking at all of this, right? Like a self-care task now is just turning off your phone, right? You know, it's just putting your phone down, is putting on, I have an app on my phone, because this is what happens to me at different stages and phases, that it turns off all distracting apps. If I try and open them, they won't refresh, right? For a period of time. It's to help me focus. It's to help me not instinctively pick up my phone and just I'm just going to spend a couple minutes really quick or whatever. And next thing I know, half hour's gone by or whatever. But not realizing sometimes that the sheer amount of content that I consume that now starts all these, it's like the equivalent, if you think about when you sit there and you scroll through Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and you're reading, right? You're reading everyone's thoughts. It's the equivalent of someone just like all those people just yelling at you all of a sudden, right? And you need to think of it that way. And if you sit there and do that for more than a few seconds, if that was happening to you in person, you'd be like, whoa. That we can't handle that, right? But we don't think about that in terms of social media. We just kind of gloss over it, move on to the next thing. It also absolutely impacts our ability to focus on anything because we can easily just jump our attention to the next thing. It makes it very difficult, I would say, especially for creatives, to do any what's called deep work on anything because of the distractions that we have all over the place and all the different tools that we have to make our distractions easier. Apple Watches and our AirPods and all the dings and notifications that can pop up. Absolutely, for sure.
Something else that I was thinking about along those lines as well, too, and whether you're creative or not, I've always said that at the end of the day, you can't put your life's energy behind a compromise. And which means sometimes you have to sit down and be willing and be able to have a conversation with yourself about the things that you desire most. Have a conversation with yourself about what's required in order for you to feel like you're making progress, right? At the end of the day, entrepreneurship is a vehicle. That's what it's supposed to be, a vehicle to take you to your goals, whether it be taking care of your family, whether it be giving back to the community, whether finding ways to express your passion, your talents, and your gifts. Ultimately, that's what entrepreneurship should be about for most people. That's what I think it is about, right? And if you have 20 million people chirping in your ear 24/7, instead of you determining your thoughts, instead of you determining the things that matter most, instead of you determining which perspectives, your opinions, being able to get in contact with that inside compass, if you will, right? It becomes, how you feel, what's most important, you start to become negligible, particularly when you consider the amount of content some of us are consuming. For me, I know you're going to laugh at me, Rochelle, right? So I'm making this transition to Android to iPhone. It's been fascinating. They have this app on here that I didn't pay any attention to for I don't know how long, where it literally tracks your screen time.
Yeah.
And I looked at that app and I said, man.
So I have that actually on when I open my phone. That's the first thing I see is a chart of my screen time for that exact reason of being like, oh, you're going to open your phone again? What are you doing?
Right.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I personally, I have to be on social media because of the nature of the work that we do. Right. But the ideal that you could be on social media and you could be spending 4 or 5 hours. My goal is to limit to 2 to 3, right? Interact, engage, respond to individuals who are engaging my content. But until you get your business to the point where you have such traction that it's an asset and pay you the income whether you go to work or not, I just firmly believe, especially when you're an entrepreneur starting out, you shouldn't be on there like it's your job.
No.
Right? And I'm also acutely aware of the fact that we have an industry that has grown up, that's burgeoning, that's generating millions of dollars off our attention, right? So most of these gurus, most of these social media, internet, SEO experts, they're compensated to get us to be on social media more than ever, right? Which I think provides a very unhealthy incentive, right? To tell people you need to be on there from sun up to sundown in order to be successful in business. And I think that's like a gross exaggeration, right? Unless you're really on there for the reasons why those business owners and entrepreneurs I was listening to talking about Clubhouse, where they're literally just on there networking. They're just trying to scale their influence. They're trying to scale their businesses. They already have the foundation set, right? And so, we talk about, once again, whether or not social media is good or bad for you. I think those are things that we have to really do deep dives on. And when you think about it too, just from the standpoint of where we're at as a society, right? I just firmly believe we don't understand how the internet is shaping us. When you look at how fast it's grown over the last 20 years or so, and how dramatically it's changed our lives, have we really had the time to adapt and evolve to the changing landscape? Things that normally would take 5 and 3 years, we can now get done in 30 minutes. Soon things that was required for 30 minutes now will end up taking what, a minute in the future? How's that impacting our children? How's that impacting our personal health in terms of our interpersonal relationships? How is that going to impact how we learn and engage each other? Right? I think a lot of the conflict, anger, and frustration people exhibit today is because of issues like that.
Yeah. And, like you've said, where I don't think, especially if you're not someone who, if you're maybe more newer to social media, right, or you haven't used it a whole lot, it's not going to take you very long to realize that it's not always going to be a positive influence on you. It's not, it's a very much it's like a drug. It hits those dopamines and then you want it more and more and more. One thing I emphasize a lot, and especially in the work that I do, is not just to ask you to limit your time on social media, like Juan was saying, of like, you know, all your marketing efforts shouldn't be to be scrolling through, posting content, blah, 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 right? All day long. It's really not. And again, unless you're at that scale phase, right? And if you're at the scale phase, you have a team, and maybe that is your role as CEO, is to have this front facing presence. That's one thing, right? But if you're in this growth phase, if you're in this building phase, schedule your social media time like you'd schedule a meeting. That's what I do with my clients. I say, okay, here's what you're going to do on these days, and you need to block this amount of time to do it, and just set it up every week. That's when you're going to do it, right? Here's 5 to 10 minutes you need to be spending, or 15 minutes you need to be spending socializing, because again, that's important. Set that on your calendar. Set it, do it, and then get off and be done, right? If you're creating that habit, then this doesn't feel like as much of a burden. This doesn't feel like, and hopefully you're not then using it in conjunction as a tool for just mindless whatever. You have other hobbies and things that you can do for that, right? But so that there's that balance, but scheduling that time, using it as a work task time, thinking of it that way, I definitely think can help.
Yeah, there's a couple clients that I work with, right? Giving myself a unabashed compliment, right? But anyway, a couple clients I work with, particularly individuals in the contracting industry, even some business owners, though, that quite frankly are white collar. And something I'm a huge fan of is chronicling it right now, right? So you don't have to set aside time to curate social media. If you really want people to understand the nature of work that you do and understand the value you bring to the table, you know, I like what Gary Vee does. I think that's brilliant. How from time to time, he was literally creating content of meetings that he was hosting with business owners, right? I have clients of mine who are contractors, and they literally will capture moments of them working on a particular project, right? The before and after pic. There are musicians that I work with, and I encourage them, let people see your process. Yeah. If you're a writer or a poet, capture your process. Let them see the moments when you're cursing underneath your breath. Okay, you have writers blocking everything else, right? I mean, to an extent, as frustrating as this is, it's also a bit entertaining for me, right? People need to know that if you're an entrepreneur, this is part of life. Yeah. I'm a parent dealing with the kids in the other room, trying to get them to focus on their schooling. I have a technician here because there's miscommunication between the company and I, but the beat still goes on, right? You still got to be able to focus and tune in. I think people are looking for they're looking for some of that in social media. And I think particularly if you're a business owner that can, once again, kind of figure out how to capture your process, capture your work, capture your value, then it's just a matter of, you already have the content, you just find somebody to edit it for you, right? Mm-hmm. And that way you don't expend so much time. Because I know I personally don't necessarily have the time to set aside 2-3 hours to create content. It's not what I do. Right. Anything that I post online, it was because I was already thinking about it. I was already talking about it. I was already involved in some type of process. And I figured, let me capture this while I'm in it. Right. But, you know, I don't know, maybe because I haven't gotten so big yet where I have the time to spend 9 hours on social media doing that stuff. Quite frankly, I don't think I ever will. But that's also a suggestion I would offer to entrepreneurs as well. Yeah, if you have the knowledge, know-how, expertise, and the at least like copy and idea ready to go, right? If you can pass that off to someone who's experienced, they can do that very quickly. I think about, a conversation we just had yesterday with, I was working with Mary Bird, and she had everything ready to go, but just needs someone to put it all together. For me, that's a perfect client. I don't want to sit here and guess what you want.
right? She had it ready to go. I just needed to put it together, right? And we were able to work faster than us individually trying to do that. So absolutely, when you can have that stuff ready to go and pass it off to someone who's experienced, it's gonna work much faster. So we will be continuing this conversation inside the NextOppSocial After Show group on Facebook. We invite you to join us there. The link is going to be here in our description, or you can always head to Facebook and go to our NextOppSocial page, click community. We'll be happy to have you inside. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button here on YouTube, or visit our website at nextoppsocial.com to learn about everything we do. We look forward to conversing about this more on social media, right? But in a more productive manner. And we look forward to helping you achieve a life of satisfaction